This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you late Tuesday evening. It's January 9th. Britt, I'm joined by Britt Robson here. We both made the trip to Orlando to do our sparse road game coverage.
Yeah, we're probably the first non-postgame road pod.
What does that mean?
It isn't in the postseason.
Oh, not in the postseason. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you said post-game. I was like, pretty sure.
Oh yeah,
this is a post-game.
post-game. Yeah, so
We got a
that
blowout.
first mistake out of the way.
Yeah, there we go. We had a blowout tonight. Wolves were up by 30 at halftime. Kind of coasted the rest of the way there.
Right.
I was interested to see in the post-game press conference, like, was Finch going to be like angry that they didn't, they weren't able to rest their starters. I'm sure some people will be hand-wringing over that or whatever. But he seemed, he wasn't. He was pleased with the performance, and I think that makes sense, right? They got back on track. This was the first game that they have really kind of looked like their old selves or their early December selves, maybe.
Aaron Freeman with the media department and Leah B. Olson asked a question in the press conference. Both of them mentioned that Finch, they didn't say lit into them, but basically Finch was more direct and animated, whatever you want to call it. The message got sent stronger than is typical, apparently, at shoot-arounds, that the Wolves needed to get back to good habits and change their ways. And I suspect if Finch was grouchy after that, it would be a bad look, given that, I mean, I don't know how much you ripped him. I wasn't there. I'm just surmising.
Yeah, no, like the word was that is not like, let's get this one and not take care of Boston tomorrow, but like, let's take care of this game tonight. It's a shorthanded.
And also let's get, let's not keep screwing around here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's not win a good game against Houston and then lose a winnable game 2 nights later. I mean, it's not the time to do that. If they had lost tonight, there's a very good chance they'd be 1-5 in January. Mm-hmm. That's how, you lose your grip. That's how you begin to get a little panicky, especially if you haven't won before on a regular basis. And you need to reassure yourselves, as well as your fan base, as well as your coach, that you are going to be the kind of team that has some resiliency. And so that was, they were up 10-0. There was never a doubt in the game that they were going to lose.
Yeah. Or that they were going to win.
Never a doubt they were going to win. And I think, Cat hit a 3, Jaden just clamped down on Banchero. Rudy got a lot of single coverage looks, sealing his man in the paint. Orlando looked overwhelmed. And as you and I were talking about during the game, they don't have a star-studded lineup, and people reasonably can wonder how they were 21-15 going into this game. And one of the reasons is they have a really good coach in Mosley, and they play really, really hard. And they played really hard even when they were down big. They had a couple of times where their dedication was turning over the Wolves in a manner that really helped. And so, it was the kind of game where it was a question of how much they would win by, and it was also a question of, could you rest the starters? It turns out that on third quarter blip, really, they couldn't. They went through a couple of turnover-plagued parts of that third quarter, and they had to bring back Conley for 31 instead of 23. That's the biggest. Whenever I think of rest, he's the first one that comes to mind. And to be fair, as fantastic as they looked, it really was the 3 guys in the front court who were, each of them played close to their best game of the season.
And we should define front court, because Finch got confused by how to define front court.
Well, old-fashioned, you used to be able to say your front court was your center and your 2 forwards. Yeah. And now it's a wing, but Jaden McDaniels played like a front court player tonight. He had 9 rebounds and he guarded the other team's power forward.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, and Cat, the way I said it to him was that everybody played their roles. And I realized that put him in a bad position of, so I began to say play to their strengths. It means the same thing, but after I started talking to the players about it, I phrased it better. But essentially what they did tonight is they played to their strengths. Rudy did not. He tried one stupid little push shot, but most of the time he really adhered to sealing his man, getting buckets, dishing out, getting rid of the ball, being a terror on defense. Jaden was not trying to dribble 1-on-4, which he's done way too often this season. He didn't even shoot for the longest time. He had 6 rebounds before he had a field goal attempt. If that happens in any game,
I don't even know the last time he had 6 rebounds.
and I will tell you right now, if he has 6 rebounds without a shot, I'm almost certain that the Wolves will win the game.
That's an interesting. He is. Finch always says that, like, he is a barometer for this team, and when Jaden has a good game, others do as well.
Yeah, I think that what he means by that, I think that's a little bit of flashback fever. I think that to some extent, what that used to mean was if Jaden is getting points, it means he's the open man because other people have magnetized the rest of the defense.
Sure.
But now Jaden can get points by going 4 for 14. People thought that the Dallas game was just Jaden McDaniels being cold. He was 0 for 4 in the first half of that game because he put the ball on the deck and drove at people and tried to make ridiculously hard shots. He was like an Ant wannabe against Dallas. And then he missed 5 threes that were all open in the second half. And that's what everybody remembers. But I think if you go at Luka and Kyrie thinking you're going to dominate these poor defenders and you miss 4 shots, you're not going to be as likely to make open threes in the second half. And I think all of that plays into it. And so
he takes offense to when they put the little guard on him.
And guess what? You're the 5th option on offense. And you are the most important or the second most important defensive player on a team that leads the NBA in defense. Put your ego where it belongs. And that's what I'm saying about role or playing to your strengths. Jaden McDaniels, if you want to do something extra, get rebounds. But shut down your man, priority 1.
Which he did.
He did. Get rebounds, number 2, which he did. And then score, which he wound up. He wound up with 15 points on 6 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 5 from deep. His shot selection for almost the entire game was intelligent. It was a great game. I mean, I know I just ripped him for 5 minutes for perceived slights before. He played, I think, his best game of the season.
Well, and again, when he is doing that and not a negative, which he is, he has been some games, not consistently. He does always take that job, as he did tonight. Did a great job on Banchero, and I guess I'm thinking in my head where that game started was with Cat and Rudy being dominant to start the game in the first quarter.
But Banchero missed. I think he may have taken he took at least one of the first 2 shots, and it was I'm agreeing with you.
I was just in the moment.
No, I know.
Okay, Cat's aggressively shooting. The first shot of the game is a corner 3 from Cat. I'm like, okay, spacing. This is good. Rudy's sealing, Jalen Suggs underneath the basket and scoring. And so in the moment, I was like very focused on that and
on the offense, because that's what really needs work.
And then it starts coming to fruition that you're like, wow, like Orlando's 3 for 20 from like 2 in this game.
It was 10-0. Before anybody really settled into the game.
Totally.
And Jaden had a lot to do with that on defense. And his teammates always praise Jaden. Always say, Ant started it, Cat's gotten on, Rudy does it. Mm-hmm. But he's not had by Jaden McDaniels standards, he has not had a great on-ball defensive season. And Nah would give him a run for his money, in my opinion, throughout total performance on ball against the top scorers.
But what Jaden can do is guard a greater variety.
He can guard the 230-pound guys.
And that was an interesting decision going into this game. Jason and I were talking about that this morning when we recorded. I was like, well, do you think they're going to treat Banchero like they did Julius Randle last week, which was guarding him with Cat and Anderson, or is it going to be like Zion guarding him with Ant and Nas?
Right.
Which are very, very different things.
Yeah.
And to Jason's credit, he brought up, he's like, well, maybe Jaden, like, he's like, Banchero isn't as big as those guys. Or Banchero's physical for sure, but not to maybe Julius Randle and Zion standards. So that matchup worked. And I think that's probably what Finch and the coaching staff saw too, that Jaden was the best option to shut that down. Or maybe it is because it didn't work against Randle. Cat didn't work against Randle. And kind of worked against Zion. Not really, though.
Well, Zion eventually got his way. He ground him down. But I was impressed that you remembered that Banchero had a terrible game against this team in the first time they played.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he was like 4 for 19 or something, you said.
Yeah, I looked it up during the game because I remember that. It was the...
And do you remember who was on him? Was it Jaden again?
I went at halftime and looked it up, and it was Kyle Anderson in that game. Because Franz Wagner played. Jaden was there. But either way, it was.
But still, another way, right?
3 for 16 in that game, and then this game, I know he started 3 for 15.
Right.
So the Wolves, I don't know, have had his number, and maybe it is just length because Kyle is doing that, Jaden's doing that.
And they're also they're big enough. They're as big as he is, pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're not lumbering. And so there were, when he did get going at all in the second half, I think he started by getting it points in transition and beating a couple people off the dribble, and then began to hit threes, which is often the way it works. He finished 8 for 22, I think. You know, he had a Banchero-like second half, but it was a moot point, you know, and who knows how he would have been guarded. The whole thing is when you're up by 30 at the half, all the dynamics change.
Totally.
And, you know,
and they certainly did.
When it mattered, he was not a factor on offense, and he is the guy. And that may, I think, if I had to, you know, you saw Banchero play his last 3 games. I saw the Denver game, which is among those last 3 games.
I think he's been dominant.
He was very good. I think he may be getting worn out. You know,
well, and they've had to lean on him a lot more recently with Wagner
out. A lot of people out.
And
but in any case, great offense, great defense, no let up. They had a couple of burps of clusters of turnovers that shaved the lead from 32 to 22. Even I think one time it was 20 or 18. But they inevitably came back, made some smart plays, hit the threes. I mean, Ant had a terrible game. Nah had an uncharacteristically bad game. Jaden Suggs got into him in a way it just embarrassed him. I mean, Finch had to pull him. And that is something that needs to be said about Nickeil Alexander-Walker is he's giving you everything he has, and he is not a point guard.
Right.
He is being a pretty good, reasonable facsimile of a point guard until he runs into somebody who is a bulldog that can handle point guards who are point guards.
When they were picking him up full court, and
they were trying to come back from 30, and they were basically saying we need to turn over everybody and hit threes. You know, and that's what they were trying to do. Mosley's a great coach, and Nickeil. Finch yanked him. I think he tried some behind the back thing in traffic. I don't know what, you know, we're sitting on the end of the baseline, and so we get to see all the drama.
Yeah.
You know, I was tweeting out gossip tweets about, you know, Finch, you know, yanks, you know, then he was going to go after Cat because Cat Cat fell down, you know, for no reason. I mean, I was watching the entire play, and the next thing I know, Cat's on the ground. He wasn't in the play. So how was Cat on the ground?
That was the one where they called the timeout and Finch is going over to talk.
This is after, you know, they went 5-on-4 because Cat's on the ground, and they run down, hit a corner 3. Finch immediately calls timeout and is striding out. He wanted to have it be in the middle of the floor, not in the huddle, that he is going to talk to Cat. And Cat goes and complains to the ref.
Kennedy,
so he doesn't have to see Finch on the way by. It was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
But, we get all that dramatized because now we're right next to the bench all of a sudden on the baseline, which, many, many decades ago, I saw rookie Dwight Howard play Kevin Garnett along the baseline.
Here in Orlando.
Yeah, in Orlando. And it was one of the 3 Orlando games I've seen now. And the other one was also in that old arena. And they seated us on the baseline. It was the first time I'd been on the baseline. Yeah. We were even closer. There wasn't anybody sitting in front of us. We were right behind the photographers who sit on the floor. But even so, it was just violence. It was really interesting to see. It's kind of like if you go see a hockey game and you're like right along the boards or something. I mean, people just crushing each other. Right. And in basketball, under the rim, especially back then, and KG and Dwight Howard was 18, wasn't going to back down from anybody. Brick shit house. And KG is like, not in his prime, but close to his prime. And they were at war. It was fun. I mean, it really gave me a great appreciation for how hard it is to get rebounds.
It is cool, the stadiums where we get to sit that close. Memphis is like that.
Right.
Dallas is actually like that, or Orlando's like that. I personally like hearing what Finch is saying, or even just like the play calls or
and the looks on his face.
Yeah. No, it's serious.
And the guy is an open book.
Yeah.
If they kept the camera on him on TV all the time, everybody would get a lot more information.
It's so always with Nas and Nikhil, like you could just see that the leash that Finch has for patience with their turnovers or slip ups is so much. And Nas once a game has one of those bad kind of fumbling turnover type things. But
Finch, the thing is also, if it's not Nah. Well, I mean, occasionally now it's been J-Mac, but most of the time before, most of the season, if it's not Nah, it's Conley. Mm-hmm. And if it's not Nas, it's Slow-Mo.
Right.
So his 2 guys who are his security blankets, of course, the leash is short because he wants to play those guys 35, 40 minutes a game anyway. And so he has the justification in his mind. The last thing in the world he wants to do is go to bed thinking, I lost the game because I didn't play the guys I should have played because I wanted to rest them. Right. What am I resting them for if we just lost the game? Yeah. I mean, that's the way coaches think. And so he preempts that by taking out Nas and Nah with quick leashes. So
let's grab our first break here. I do want to dive into Cat a little bit.
Oh, by all means, what a game.
Yeah,
we haven't gotten and Rudy, but I mean, they all Rudy, Cat, and Jaden all played fantastic.
Absolutely. We'll take our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. We were actually talking to the owner, Dan, before the game tonight, and we are going to be doing a live show there again over All-Star break. We're going to figure out specific logistics there, but it's fun to find those times during the season to be able to just connect.
I always have a great time
there. It's that'll be fun. We'll do that at the end of All-Star break. We're locking down some details on that, but that'll be fun. Also, I just want to hit on tomorrow night, Wolves Celtics. I think that's what better time to go a road game, go to a sports bar or brewery bar to watch the Wolves game. They always do have the sound on, and they have the projector screens there as well. I would imagine tomorrow at Falling.
Get there early.
Hey, yeah, it's.
I mean, if you want, because let's face it, it may be one of those games you want to say, I was there when they flew on the same day of the game, and the Celtics had lost at home the entire season, and
that's true.
They had beaten the Celtics. The Celtics had everything to win for, and there was this bad weather in Orlando and in Boston, but they won, and I saw that game. Or you could say, I was there for the first half, and then in the second half, we just got drunk.
That is Falling Knife Brewing Company, where you could go and watch the Wolves game or just have some beers there.
And if you're going to get drunk, it's some. I mean, I wish this was a falling knife right now.
So Falling Knife Brewing Company, they're in Northeast Minneapolis. Again, whether it's tomorrow night for the Celtics game or just in general, this is a great time to watch the Wolves with other Wolves fans. It's one of, I think, for both of us, one of our favorite things of going and covering games together is having somebody to talk to about it.
That's how we started the podcast. Pretty
exactly.
Much. You and I, not you and the podcast.
No, exactly. That's like, it should be a podcast. So Falling Knife Brewing Company, Northeast Minneapolis. And I also just want to mention that we do have 2 tickets to give away for the Wolves Blazers game on Friday. We're giving away those to Patreon subscribers. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you just send us a message on there. Let us know that you're available for that game. Then we just select at random from the people who let us know that they are available for that. If you want to become a Patreon subscriber to get in on the ticket deal, patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA, which is also just a great way to support the show. If you can't maybe go to Falling Knife or you can't support the other sponsors, if you do want to directly support the show, patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. It's smart that you brought up the travel thing. I'm sure everybody will maybe have heard of this by tomorrow morning, but I think the inclement weather is now in Boston. It was there was like tornado warnings.
We walked from the arena tonight, and when we Ubered down, it hadn't started the rain yet, but apparently in between was nuts. In Orlando, and my sister. One of the reasons I'm in Orlando is my sister lives in the 7th circle of hell, known as the Villages. But I'm going to visit her. I'm not going to visit the Villages. But
it's a good excuse.
There were tornadoes that touched down near her, and the Village is about 70 miles from Orlando. So there was, the weather people love to shriek about this anyway. When I went to bed last night before I flipped on the weather, and they were in full. All I know is they canceled the second half of school today in Lake County and Marion County last night.
I think the reason that the Wolves can't fly tonight is because of Boston.
I know.
Though, so.
And there's apparently there's some kind of snowstorm in the Pacific Northwest. The Great Plains are flooded with snow, and all up and down the East Coast there's pockets of heavy wind and some kind of precipitation and occasional tornadoes. So
it was funny that we got to kind of be the one to inform the players that they were staying overnight. All of them were just like,
I know.
Mike Conley was like, not happy about it. Not gonna lie. That's
unfortunate. I don't think I've ever done that. Never flown on the day of a game. But what's ironic is that it all happened where we are right now when we were pleasantly watching a basketball game.
Right. And
you may be affected because you're going to Boston. I'm not.
Right. I don't my flight.
But, I'm just basically, it's just business as usual for me. I just hear all the chatter.
Are you going to watch the Boston game at your sister?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's what's great is, I have my laptop and then you get league pass when you're not in the market.
That's true.
So, I'll be able to watch it on
Jim Pete.
And they're actually, I grew up in Massachusetts, Brookline, right around Boston. And so my sister did too. So, everybody knows the Celtics in my family.
Robson family huddle around the laptop.
Well, the guy actually who, my sister won't like it as much as her husband.
Okay.
So, but he sent me a Celtic Christmas ornament one time. And I think he's a golfer more than, that's why he lives in the Villages, I'm sure. But he's a Celtic fan too. So it's going to be my excuse. I'm going to greet him enthusiastically with, hey, we're going to watch the Celtics tonight.
We'll talk about that in a bit. I want to talk about that at the end. I'm interested to see how they respond to that. Just that matchup. Obviously, these inclement.
Well, it's just
circumstances.
If there's a schedule loss to be had,
it's
this would be the one.
Right. Okay, let's talk about.
But back to the good things tonight. Yeah.
The Cat and Gobert had here in the first half. Karl was 23, 4 and 4 on 9 of 11 shooting. I think it was like 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 from deep there. Rudy had about as good of a first quarter as he's had all season. He was 5 for 5, 11 points in that quarter at 15 and 10 at halftime. I thought it was Rudy. That was as good of a job as I've seen of Rudy punishing smalls on switches, getting deep, sailing underneath the basket, and finishing there. I mean, it was. I said it to you at the time during the game. I was like, crazy to say, as good as the season has been, that I don't remember a time that like the big identity was this dominant,
right,
since the play-in game against Oklahoma City to get into the playoffs, where they, they beat the Thunder by 30 because
at least by a good team.
Yeah, well, but even I don't know. I need to go back through it and look at it some, but they've won other games handedly this season, but I don't think it was because of Cat and Rudy being dominant, doing in big type of ways. And in a lot of the other blowouts this season, it's because it's been a huge Ant game. That's a big story in this game too. Is Ant is 2 for 7 from the field and only had 6 points, and the Wolves still dominate.
Yeah, exactly. He had a terrible game. What I like, I mean, one of the things that happens when you're in a cluster of beat media is that by the third or fourth interview, people are kind of curious to hear the answer to like a similar question you're asking.
Yeah.
And your question tonight, you asked of at least 3 different people, is Finch said, if we're going to be a big team, we need to start acting like a big team. You quoted him to people, and then you said, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And what Rudy said, I know because I just transcribed it for Chris Hine, is that they adapt to us, we don't adapt to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great summation, is exactly what happened in that first half.
Sure.
Because they couldn't adapt to them, but they had to try. They had to totally, whatever they were coming in on a game plan to do, that game plan was not working and not going to work. So they had to try something different because Cat, Rudy, and Jaden McDaniels were destroying them at both ends of the court.
Right.
I mean, Cat had I'd have to, he's 9 years into the league now. But this is definitely one of the top 3 dunks he's ever had.
Easy.
It was a
right in front of us.
fantastic dunk. I know. That's another great thing about it was we were on the baseline for it. But he went over somebody, and how often do you see Cat go over somebody? That was great.
And kind of like from a distance, too, from the back.
And I didn't know, we were all, why are they all pointing to him? It was because he didn't know if he made the dunk or something. When he went by, he looked back, and that's what people were, and also maybe
they were pointing all game.
He wanted to complain about the fouls or something.
I think it was mostly
probably something they didn't want to tell us.
I think there was probably some sort of beef between some of the Orlando players or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, Karl dominant with the dunk. I mean, it was just such a good use of Karl's offense.
Right.
It came out early, firing, open, kind of open. Like I liked. There's a couple times he passed off of it. Like one time he had it above the break and he passed it to Jaden in the corner. And those are the ones where I'm like, you need to be the one shooting this. But generally speaking, with the Dallas game and tonight, I feel like Karl's turning up the dial a little bit on his 3-point volume. And when he does that, particularly at the beginning of the game, they're just not as loaded up on him driving to the basket, which allows him to get to the basket more slowly, which means more under control. And I thought it was some of his
good point.
Best under control, deliberate, but still deliberate drives to the basket. And easy.
Two things you said really reveal that. One is he got confidence early because he was able to do a couple of things successfully that bolstered his feel for the game. And secondly, he was playing under control with aggressive deliberation. And that's not Cat's game usually. Stray voltage will always be affixed to his name because he's a stormy player. Right. And this was a confident star playing organically.
Yep.
And that is a rare sighting with Cat. Not that, that's not a rip. It's just that one of the reasons Cat doesn't get a great whistle, and one of the reasons Cat gets mocked occasionally, is because Cat doesn't play with a temperament that lets everybody know this is the way it's going to be.
Right.
And the great thing about Cat tonight was you felt that in him. You just went, wow, Cat is just, there was one point where the ball was in the air and I said, that's going in because he really feels it tonight. And it wasn't, I'm going to show people. It was like, I'm open again. Can't believe it, but it's going in. And then, he turned around every now and then, just a little, it was a game where you just say, if we can have this Cat in big stakes in the postseason, what is our changed opinion of this team?
It was, so you transcribed Gobert, I transcribed Towns, and listening back to it, well, you just asked him, do you think that was one of your best halves of the,
of course,
the season? But multiple times in his answers, he said, I shot threes more because I was taking what the defense was giving.
Right.
I went to the basket when that was taking what the defense was giving me. And I always think that's an interesting line, because if I'm the defense, I want you to take what I'm giving you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so in this game, it very much worked. I wonder with star level players, if that mindset can work, but also be dangerous. And when we talk about like the playoffs, right?
Right.
Okay, well, if they're running you off the 3-point line super aggressively, as they probably will in the playoffs, do we not take threes because that's not what they're giving you, or do you go away from the post completely because they're doubling there?
Right.
It's just, with Karl, it's this interesting one, because Karl is a star player who is a star player because he's like an elite role player. You could, and what I mean by that, he's an elite role player in multiple different roles.
In the half court, he is a matchup nightmare anywhere on the court if you don't play him properly.
Yep.
And sometimes even when you do, which is your point.
Yeah.
And so
I guess that's what my question is it's like, at what point do you not, agree to that?
Right.
Do you not agree to that? Or it's like Ant now. He's talking about that. He's like, when they're doubling me, his line was always, when they're doubling me, I'm getting off of it. Now it's changed in the past 3 weeks. It's like, even if there's doubles, I can't let go of my aggression for it. And, and I've rolled my eyes at that some, but there is something to that. In that situation with Ant, you need to be thinking like, all right, they're putting 2 on me. So what I could do is I can't just get off of it. Or I need to be thinking about, I know the second guy's coming. Can I split this double here and get through it there? When you're a star player, I think it's important to take what the defense is giving you and to sometimes take more.
And when I posed the obvious follow-up when he said, no, wasn't, I was just taking what they give me. I said, on the second series of the game, you ran down to the 3-point line in the corner. They didn't give you that. You went down to the 3-point line, and he pushed back and said, well, and described the play. We were both right. My point was, you probe a defense and then you find out what you can get and not get. But Cat, how many times has Cat run down to the 3-point line in the first 2 possessions of the game?
No, that's the first thing I said to you. I said corner 3.
Exactly,
right
because you looked it up. He's taken, 2 or something.
Right, he's
5.
made 2. I think that was his third made corner 3.
So, which a great a shooter as he is ridiculous. And so my point was, no, you tested to see if they would give you that. If you never test them, then you don't know whether they're going to give it to you or not. So you can't say I'm taking what they give us.
Yeah.
Because you're editing yourself. And what you're also saying is it is correct that you're taking what they're giving them, but that's because you're probing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same thing. And Kat was saying, I'm probing to pass or probing to see what can happen,
Mm-hmm.
not just for me, but everybody on the team. And that's a correct answer too. It's just in this particular circumstance, the original answer to my question was, is this one of your best games of the season? I'm just taking what they give me. No, because in many of the other games, if not all of them, you weren't testing their ability to handle your corner three. And that's a dimension that makes this potentially a really exciting development.
No, it is an exciting development, and I understand psychologically fighting that some, because you think of the corner spacer as the role player, the fifth option. It's
so sick of that.
It's the jaded. I mean, but that's not just a Cat thing. That's
I know.
That's a high level player.
Bruce Bowen. Thing. Bruce Bowen is probably the original corner three specialist in San Antonio's offense. He was a defensive specialist, and everybody raved about the fact that suddenly Bruce Bowen could be of use on offense because he sucked on offense. He was always a great defensive player. Yeah. And over some offseason, he honed a corner three.
Yeah.
And then, so because Bruce Bowen was like the quintessential corner three specialist, it became like, this is what, this is the dirty work guy. This is where we put the dirty work guy. And
it like spawned a breed of
PJ Tucker. Here we go.
And I get, if I'm Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't want to be so much more than that. But it is even just one of those things. I think even doing it early, it establishes some of that space in the offense. And it's like, it's not going to be a plant him in the corner type of thing, but it's an additional dimension to Cat's game where he can be a dominant off the dribble player. He can be a dominant post up player. He can be a dominant top of the key 3-point player. He could be a dominant corner spacer as well. So
and let's not fuck around here. If he is trying to be a dominant drive-through traffic guy, we've seen many years of this. Sometimes it works really well. Yeah. But if you're asking me, will the Timberwolves be better off if the second most dominant thing that Cat tries to do on the court is a corner three versus putting it on the deck against a double team? I mean, I asked Conley tonight, why do you consistently turn the ball over every game, whether you're playing badly or not playing badly?
Not Conley specifically, you were talking about.
Were you asking Conley because he's the one that knows how to answer it, plus he never turns it over, so he knows. But why are people constantly turning it over on this team? I asked for the 2 or 3 biggest factors. He gave me one, which is fine, which is because we continue to dribble in space. We don't get off it when we're in traffic.
Yeah, dribbling into a crowd.
He dribbled into a crowd, and you don't get off it when you see that the crowd. And how often, I mean, Cat does get off it occasionally, but it's always one of those, I got 75 guys on me, here you go. Rather than leaning, Dom made a play tonight. He drew the double team to him almost right to the beginning, and then still had enough room to just zip a pass. And that's what LeBron is really, really good at, and a lot of other players are really good at, is knowing when the most optimal moment to get rid of the ball when you're coming on a double team. And LeBron obviously has had 20 years of practice. I don't expect Cat to be there, but I would expect Cat to, rather than get in a pissing match with the refs and throw his hands up because he didn't get fouled when, of course, he thought he got fouled because he's driving through 3 people and otherwise is embarrassed, then instead just get rid of the ball and go to the corner and be a 3-point specialist, because guess what? Your scoring average will go up 3 or 4 points a game, and the team will have much more spacing and be much better.
Well, and maybe this game can serve as
That's
an
right.
example.
I was going to. I'm about to get another beer, folks. It's in the fridge. But
we'll take another break. All right, we are back. Britt, let's talk about the defense a little bit. Another interesting Cat answer was, I was like, how did you shut off the paint completely in this game? And what he said was, we got that fly around back.
That's a great word. You love
that word.
It's my favorite word.
That was your favorite.
When it comes to the Wolves, I'm glad that he's held on to it because he likes that word a lot too.
Oh, that was his best. I think that was his best defensive season of his career
2 years ago.
2 years ago, the year before Rudy came, and they were playing such an aggressive style of defense that it forced you to have that low man help and scramble and X out and all those sort of things. And eventually they got really good at it. And I remember many times last season, once they brought Gobert in and they're playing in a drop and we're playing a lot of guards who don't naturally fly around, Ant, D'Lo, Bryn Forbes, Jalen Noel, whatever.
Right.
They lost that fly around mentality, not necessarily because of the personnel,
right,
but the scheme took a more conservative coverage takes some of that away.
Right.
And that back at the beginning of the season when this defense wasn't just the number one defense, it was the number one defense.
Right.
It had that too, where it had the word I was using
because
back then
Rudy
a lot.
moved.
Rudy moved. They pursued. Yeah. I think it's like
that's a good way to say it, because
when you're up in coverage, you need to literally fly around to get out to the corners and get above the break.
Right.
In this scheme, when you have Rudy at the rim, you just need to pursue the hell out of your man or where the ball is going.
And you also have to backfill for Rudy, at least temporarily, if he's up and then returning.
Yeah.
If he's recovering. And there are a lot of times where you have to switch for a minute, and then Rudy will, Rudy's used to that, the occasional coverage. I mean, that he tried to do it in Utah, and he was kind of reluctant to do it here, and he's become a lot more trusting of it, but it still involves a lot of alert and mental fly around as well as physical fly around, knowing that has to happen. And when Rudy comes up, he didn't come up much tonight, quite frankly, because he wasn't needed.
No, he did against. I was rewatching the Dallas game.
Yep. Well,
he comes up against Luka. He will do it, and he can do it.
Yeah.
He has the
inclination. And Kyrie, that was. I mean, we're talking the Dallas game.
Yeah.
If two guys are able to do what they do, he can't guard both of those guys. He can't deter both. I mean, he's not going to guard either one of them, but he can.
He has to trust.
He can blow up. He can blow up one player. He can't blow up two.
Yeah. I hope to the Cat point that this game serves as something to point to of like, this is where you can make offense great, and then defensively, I hope this game serves as a reminder of what they can be defensively when they pursue and they fly around.
And I noticed, as I did with Jaden, I went off on a 3-minute rant of what Cat does wrong, and the dominant point tonight that I want to emphasize, because if Cat has a bad game, I dwell on it. Well, Cat had a really good game, so that's what I want to dwell on.
Sure.
I want to dwell on the fact that I'm going to say, despite phenomenal performances by Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert, I think he was the best player on the floor for the Wolves tonight. And, I just think he did what he needed to do on defense. He certainly wasn't a liability. When he was out of the game, I noticed that their defense lagged a little bit. A lot of that was, personnel who was in with him and not in with him. But also, offensively, he just had that organic confidence that confident stars have. And the more we can get that, and the more ways he can punish you as just doing business rather than see, I am special. That mentality, which he had tonight, is very encouraging.
I think it was a great matchup for him. It was Chuma Okeke was who he was guarding.
He's their starter, right? He's actually one of their guys. He starts because he can defend bigs well, relatively.
But it was like he's more of a perimeter type defender. You put him on Ant more, but they had Suggs to do that. But those are the best matchups for Cat, where it's not strenuous defensively. It's Keke is a guy who's gonna kind of begrudgingly shoot threes. So it doesn't really hurt if Cat's kind of like a step slow on that closeout defensively, which allows him to be a little bit more flying around himself and on the interior helping there. And then, offensively, he's got more size to be able to shoot over a player like that. And then it was great once Karl was out there at the 5 and he's out there next to Nas. Then he's got Patadze on him, or Wagner, and then Cat can go into the post. And he recognized it was the second quarter. He's like, okay, Patadze's on me immediately to the block, and it's just single coverage, and it's over. Like that type of, if he can play guard a non-threatening 4 for the majority of his minutes, and then the rest of them when he's at a 5, be able to punish that 5 on offense. That's the best.
And if he is a key cog in a 15 to 20 point lead, which means that I don't want to say this pejoratively again, but if Cat feels like he has nothing to lose, he's really good.
Yeah.
And
the Lakers playing game.
I predicted that game.
You did.
I mean, I knew that playing game, Gobert was out. If they win, it's kind of an upset. And also at the same time, he's going against, guys that are big stars, had nothing to lose. And that clear-mindedness, though, that's the thing. Again, I want to turn this in a good direction, because it is a good direction. If Cat can get that sense, if Cat has legitimate reasons for that organic confidence, and yet he continually overestimates the impact of the things that can interfere. He often is trying to prove himself at times when it isn't even the subject of the conversation anymore. And that's the thing that tonight, it was like, I just helped propel us to a 15 to 20 point lead, and now I'm going to destroy this guy. I mean, it was like, just business. I don't care who's in front of me. It turns out this guy is a great matchup for me, and I'm going at him, or whatever. Like that slam dunk. He doesn't even try that slam dunk in most instances.
Yeah, he probably doesn't if he wasn't already rolling in that game. I remember for the playing game at Staples or Crypto or whatever it's called, I was walking out to the floor before the game, pregame. Then Karl was walked out. He was behind me too, so we kind of walked out the last 15 yards up to the floor together. And there's no Gobert in that game. Gobert was suspended. And I was like, I'm just like, what do you think tonight? Like, no Gobert, AD, and LeBron. And he just kind of tapped me. He's like, let's go have some fun, And that sounds like a kind of cliche answer, but to me, the light bulb that turned on for me there was kind of the nothing to lose and the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah.
And then he had an awesome game. In that, or at least for the first.
And he was ready for it.
He was, yeah. So I think that's what it's about.
He remains. I mean, to put a cap on this, he's had a checkered history of big moments, but he remains just a fascinating, compelling X factor in anything that's going to happen with the Wolves. It could be, that Cat will unlock at the right time. I mean, and he did a couple of times in the Denver series, actually, which again kindles that fire.
Right.
And he's got also a history of not being able to meet the moment. But this team has that in its makeup. Sure. I mean, they are the best team in the Western Conference. Cat has not conquered his demons, but Cat is a vital part of a team that has got the best record in the Western Conference. So then you ask yourself, when things get more elevated and the competition has more stakes to it and everything, and everybody is expecting Cat to not meet the moment, or some people are expecting it, as detractors are expecting it. He has a season worth of, this is the best team he's ever played on by a country mile. I mean, it isn't even close. And no, he's not regarded as the best player, and there may be two guys on the All-Star team, and he may not be one of them, and that'll be different. But for all those reasons, also, there is less to lose. He still has something to lose. He doesn't have nothing to lose, but he has a way of being able to be the character actor who becomes the star in a big moment. And he's got the skill for it.
Right.
So
he's the ceiling. That's what we say all the time. And it's like, less and less now, but people, friends or emails or Twitter or whatever, send me, these trades that include Karl in them. And, who says no? And and my answer is always the Wolves, because Karl's in the trade. And the reason is that I believe they would say no to all the, we've all seen the trades, is because, one, they don't have like picks or anything to attach to Karl. Right. So you're not going to get a better player for him. You factor in the contract and everything. Yeah. So they're not going to trade Karl-Anthony Towns for a lesser player this season, even if you have financial motivations for that, even if fit or whatever, any of those things, they're not going to let go of the ceiling for a player that is 80% of what Karl is coming back. And it is all about, they recognize there's some volatility to Cat's performance, but what they look at more is the upper ends of games like tonight of that volatility, the ceiling of it, because ultimately, this is a team, an organization that has their eyes on being a contender. And without Cat, I don't know, like show me the trade that happens that makes them more of a contender for this season than they currently are. I don't think that exists. And it's a product of, is it a likely proposition that Karl delivers you 5 games like this out of 7 in a playoff series? No. Okay. But it's not an impossible.
Right. And let me tell you, the people who are making decisions for this organization right now are Tim Connolly, Dell Demps, Matt Lloyd, thanks, and Chris Finch, obviously, Sachin Gupta. But the first 3 or 4 names I mentioned in particular are totally invested in skilled bigs, bully ball, change the identity of the game of basketball. We are zagging while everybody zigs. They said it 2 years ago when they made the deal. They doubled down this year despite enormous criticism from me and others. That first half, they're laughing at people right now.
Sure.
I mean, you kidding me? They just destroyed a team. Yeah. And they destroyed it because the 2 best players on the floor for them are people that thought couldn't play together.
Yeah.
Cat's second best net rating in 2-player pairs is Rudy Gobert behind only Jordan McLaughlin. And McLaughlin has very few minutes with him. Yeah. Cat and Rudy are playing the way they were designed, the way that the reason the Gobert trade was made was to have this happen. The idea that they're suddenly going to get off it.
Right.
I mean, at this point, when they have the best record in the Western Conference and the best defense in basketball, and you're going to trade Cat because you're worried about a salary cap, or you don't think Cat's good enough, or he's going to crumble in the playoffs, and let's preempt it now. It's just colossal delusions. First of all, you don't know what the people who are running this team think, if you're still thinking that way, because they've certainly heard bullshit from me about it and other people about it and laughed at it. And now they're right. They were kind of wrong when I was saying it. Now they're right. They're not changing. They're not going to go back on this. I mean, and why should they? They just thumped Orlando, in Orlando, a very good, well-coached, hard-playing team that didn't have a chance after the first quarter.
Totally.
So, there you go. And you know what? You have a choice. You can be sour about it, or you can go for the ride. The ride right now is pretty good.
It is. It is. Before we talk about Boston, can I do one thing I didn't like in this game?
Yeah.
I'm extremely done with the Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson, and Jordan McLaughlin match.
No.
And I hate to be. It was a blowout, and they look great. I'm isolating on something that is an issue beyond this game, and I actually noted it and marked it down in the first half when those three guys were on the floor. It was like late first quarter into the beginning of the second quarter, and it's 5.5 minutes in the first half. In the first half, where the Wolves won the first half 67-37, the Wolves lost those 5.5 minutes, 5.5 of the 24, literally a quarter of the half, 13-8 in that time. And it looked, and you could tell they were going to, because these teams are not, that is 3 non-shooters. And are there ways to like navigate the lack of spacing, and you can move the ball perfectly, and slow-mo can do weird stuff, and Rudy can reposition himself, and Jordan can be fast or whatever. It can work for a handful of possessions, but it is killing this team to have not just two guys that you don't, Rudy, two guys you don't have to worry about shooting threes.
Right.
And then Rudy, you don't have to worry about even ever getting out there to do it.
The spacing is terrible. And not only that, but there are some guys. I mean, we're talking.
McHale is the other one. Like he's one of the shooters out there.
We're talking about. I was just talking before about organic confidence. And organic confidence, what I mean by that is somebody who not only has the confidence to do something, but somebody who's playing like, this is what I was meant to do. And what Slow-Mo was meant to do last year and what Slow-Mo was meant to do this year is the most dramatic change of any player on this roster. The fact that he is still a fairly valuable player is an enormous tribute to his resourcefulness and his court IQ. It is the skills equivalent of playing with one hand behind your back. He cannot shoot. He did finally try a 3 tonight because he had turned down 4 in a row within the last 2 or 3 possessions, and he knew he had to try one. And it hit the front iron, which very often happens. And he admitted it. He was given a window. He hit a 3 and almost a 3, like a foot on the line, too. Against the Lakers or whoever it was. I can't remember. But anyway.
It came right before the Lakers.
Yeah, like before the Lakers, where we were able to talk to him about it because he doesn't want to talk about it. Where he said, I know I have to make these shots because otherwise they're not going to guard me. He's no fool. I mean, he knows the game better than both of us put together. And so And he knows exactly why this hurts so much. At the same time, he's not taking them, which gives you some indication of how badly he's shooting them right now. And so, therefore, he's got to make a workaround. And then you have J-Mac on the floor. J-Mac can do everything beyond what you'd expect him to be able to do except shoot, especially from three. I have gotten through arguing through most of my last two columns that these two should play together and should be used as a unit together, because I do think they are uniquely qualified to overcome J-Mac and Slow-Mo. I think they should be part of a regular second unit rotation. I think they should
be with Rudy.
Exactly. That's the point I'm getting to. That's the point I'm getting to. I want to play with Nas, and Ant as the second unit 5. Ant with 4 bench guys, the 6 through 9 guys on the rotation roster. And I think it can work if you work on it, because I think that Slow-Mo and J-Mac can make that ball movement work. And I think Nas and J-Mac's synergy, and then Ant and Nas are like a net rating dream, just like J-Mac by himself is a net rating dream. And so you throw Slow-Mo in there and all his resourcefulness. I think that can work, and that rests Mike Conley, rests Rudy Gobert, and rests Karl-Anthony Towns all at the same time. It helps you get ready for the postseason and gives you a second unit with an identity, not unlike what Denver did with Jokic. You're going to lose those minutes. But if you have Bruce Brown and you have the other Brown and you have Jeff Green, there's 3 of the 4, and they're doing things, then you mix in an Aaron Gordon and you mix in a Jamal Murray, and you could make it work. That's what I want to see this team do as they get ready. But the third clanker is way too much. Yeah. You cannot do it.
Yeah, because I don't even think I agree with you about the 2.
I know.
So it's
and you know what? I think Finch agrees with you more than me. The reason
I don't know, he keeps playing them.
You know why? Because he loves J-Mac and he loves Kyle. Really loves Slow-Mo. So I'm just hoping that I'm thinking the opposite. You're saying he's playing them too much. I'm saying he needs to be patient and let it roll and let things go.
I don't care. I don't care if they both. I'm not saying. I think
you don't like the Gobert thing is the 5th, and what I'm saying is, give that 5th, give the starter of the 5 to Ant. Ant's great. I mean, everybody's great with J-Mac except for J-Mac's shot.
Yeah,
and Slow-Mo can almost work with everybody. Those two together do create a lot of spacing and shooting issues, but Nas and Ant are really good at that. And then my argument loses a little steam because he's not shooting well at all right now, but I think he can be. I think it could still be a really good second unit.
And to be fair, Finch went to it tonight once Ant was in foul trouble, or it was.
The Gobert thing, right?
That was a factor there, and I think it was against Dallas too.
And he hated Slow-Mo. I mean, I'm sorry, he hated Na. He hated Na for whatever. I mean, Na made a behind the back pass in traffic. I don't know if that was the thing.
It's just the short leash thing.
I know.
Classic coach short leash.
It was again, baseline gossip. We got to see up close and personal the dynamics of the bench again.
It's fascinating to me that he does look so perturbed by Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker when he's watching him. I think he genuinely really appreciates those. I mean, he lauds Nickeil.
He got Nickeil here. He basically and
he said Nas is one of the best players on the team.
They do not sign Nas for $42 million over 3 years,
right?
Option or no, whatever, unless Chris Finch is on board with it,
right?
And so. And skill bigs. I mean, Chris Finch, because I liked at the time, certainly, and probably still, I like Finch better than I like Tim Connolly. I was thinking, wow, Finch is going along with this Gobert deal, but he knows it's silly, doesn't he? And he never, everybody who knows Finch better than I do said no. He really likes it. I still give a shit about the seamless fit, but it's still, he's right. And the point being that when he wants somebody, he knows how he wants to make that person work. He knew he wanted Nickeil Alexander. He said he's played for a lot of different coaches a lot of different times, and he's a confidence player. Nas is also a confidence player. And Chris Finch, people bitch at him for not imposing structure and bitch at him for not calling timeouts. What do those two things have in common? Trust in your players that they will figure it out without you.
That's a good point.
And so if a coach has that trust in you and you're a confidence player and he sticks with you when you're not playing well, albeit with a short leash, then you're going to thrive.
I think I just got a notification on my iPad that my flight got delayed for tomorrow.
Let's wrap this up. Just
right.
give me one or two thoughts about the Boston matchup tomorrow.
Blowout.
Things you're looking for.
Let's
Jay said the same thing. Let's not just presume okay, that is a somewhat likely scenario given the rest.
Break it down. You said one or two thoughts. So I mean, if you want to say examine the Boston game, I will tell you they have Derek White and they have Drew Holiday.
Sure.
They are two of the 5 best perimeter defenders in the NBA. When one of them is not on the case, the other one is resting on the bench, ready to be on the case. Anthony Edwards is going through a thing right now where he wants to be aggressive, and aggressive occasionally means beating his man rather than getting off the ball, not what Finch has said that, you properly noted about aggressiveness can be passing and being smart aggressive.
Sure.
I just feel like it's a bad matchup. The game, the most pleasant surprise of the 23-24 season thus far was beating an undefeated Boston team in overtime.
No Derek White in that game too.
You're right. And that was a surprise to me. I did not think they were going to win that game. And that solidified to me, I think I wrote my giddy up column that next day. Yeah. And so, they're traveling on the same day they're playing. They just wiped out an Orlando team, Boston.
What about this?
Okay.
Ant didn't really play tonight.
Right.
And when he did play, it was bad.
Right.
It's weird where if Ant would have had a great 42-point game tonight.
They would have won by less.
Well, yeah, but I just wonder if we then would have gotten. I would have thought it was more likely that we would have gotten lethargic back-to-back Ant, the one we saw in Phoenix, the one we saw earlier in his career.
But if Ant gets 40 tomorrow, which I actually.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that is a ridiculous bet. I don't think it's likely, but I also think it's more likely than people think. But I think that is a moot point. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm just speaking honestly here. I think that the Celtics are the best team in basketball right now. They may not be from here on, but they are the only team that has the ability to claim that they are the best team in basketball more than the Wolves can claim that thus far this season. Mm-hmm. And therefore, given all the other factors and the history of the fact that the Celtics lost here at Target Center, I can't conclude any other way than to say I expect it to be, whether the final score is 112 to 102 or 138 to 99, I think that the tenor of the game will be the same, which is that the better team will, for a variety of reasons, one being travel fatigue, one being time of the schedule, one being resentfulness over losing a game they probably thought they should have won, and one being the fact that they're undefeated at home.
Yeah.
The Celtics are going to win. I wouldn't bet the house on it, but I'd bet a good shed.
It is just it's obviously everyone who listens to this like knows that what you and I like to do when we have like a thought or a take, right?
Yeah, you don't want to agree. If we can argue, it's better than agreeing.
I'm not even saying, of course, love arguing, but I like when I have a take and I can go through it and be like, this X's and O's reason bolsters my take. This stats reason bolsters my take.
Right.
I was thinking about that this morning. I told you about how Jason and I did. You went through the teams that we think would or wouldn't beat the Wolves in a playoff series when it happened, and I got to New Orleans, and I said Wolves in that. When every one of those bullet points, like the statistical, the X's and O's, and those sort of things, we've seen it 4 times. But I can't say that I genuinely think I wouldn't bet the shed or the house on the Pelicans in that series. I wouldn't, and my answer to that is not nuanced. It's ant, and that is this extra new variable, new dynamic. It's something I've never covered before. It's something I've never even really watched closely. KG, I was a kid basically back then, and it's why I think they're going to lose against Boston tomorrow, but I'm nowhere near as certain about it as you are or Jace is. And I don't have a good argument for you. My argument is Ant is playing against Jason Tatum, and I think that just does something special to him.
I think it's entirely possible that Ant will play better than Tatum, and Ant may be fabulous. And I'm actually more interested in getting into this New Orleans thing.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Because, I mean, I will tell you, until they show me they can figure out another special player like Zion Williamson, who not only is now like a beast, I can't think of a player in the NBA that fits the word beast better than Zion Williamson. I mean,
and a player that's been more beastly against the Wolves this year. I mean,
all I can say is when he came into the league, he broke his sneakers on a pivot. The centrifugal force that requires means that he has some superhuman abilities. And now he has added finesse.
But Ant does too, man.
He has added finesse. And yes, I agree. If it's who's a better player, Zion or Ant, I would probably lean Ant, but I think it's a long conversation. I don't think it's a short conversation. It is a long conversation. I think Willie Green's a great coach. I think that the fact that the Pels are so mid-range oriented plays, the Wolves have a tendency, an organic tendency, and a planned tendency. I mean, this is the way Finch and Elson Turner are drowning it up, of seeding mid-range. If you beat us with a mid-range, we're going to have to live with it. Well, you're going to die by it if you have Ingram and Zion on the court. And so
short mid-range for Zion, but that kind of in-betweener. CJ in the mid-range too.
But CJ actually has been better he spaces the floor for them. And when Trey Murphy gets healthy, I'll tell you, that is going to be, they're a really good team. But to your point, we both use analytics. We both use eye tests, all the other, but I'm twice your age. I mean, literally, if not a little more. And so my takes on things have a context that is much different than yours. And that's what makes these conversations, I think, good for both of us, and apparently good listening, is that I would say that the reasons you're leaning into giving the Wolves a 15% chance rather than a 2% chance tomorrow is because you see something in Ant right now that is a heavier marker. That's a chip in your pocket that was worth more to you than it is to me right now.
Yeah, I guess I just and there's no way of guaranteeing this.
No.
But do I get, if you could tell me tomorrow that I get the Ant against Sacramento on December 23rd,
Mm-hmm.
or even I thought Ant was really good in the Dallas game.
He was.
Can I get that? Or maybe there's a handful of other games. I don't know. Maybe it's.
But here's my problem with the Dallas game versus the Sacramento game. If he plays like he did against Dallas, then no one else really has a chance to have a good game. And that's the issue. Against the Celtics, if Tatum doesn't have it, well, Drew Holiday is as good as Jaden McDaniels, but also can score like Mike Conley. I mean, it's just Kristaps Porzingis combines a little bit of Cat and a little bit of Rudy.
Sure.
Jaylen Brown is got a little bit of Ant. I mean, it's the most talented roster if Milwaukee continues to play the way it is. I will tell you that, Middleton, Dame, Giannis, Lopez is pretty damn talented.
Sure.
Going into the season, I thought they were the most talented roster. But I think the Celtics are deep. I don't think they're well coached, and neither is Milwaukee. So that's interesting that that's happening. But I understand where you're coming from. I just don't agree with you.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. And I feel a little bit better about the Boston matchup, given what I saw tonight.
Right.
That fly around. Can you duplicate that?
But I feel there's a weather factor.
Exactly. And so then that maybe detracts it back to that. And I don't know if it's 15% or anything, but either way, I'm interested.
Well, I like that. I mean, you're in a great position because you're saying 15%. I'd say it was 15%, but if they win, hey,
right, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I was.
And that's a nice spot.
No, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, at least they have a good game tonight to build off of.
And let's finish with a nice, I think, pretty cool big picture.
Okay.
On December 8th or 11th or whenever it was, we were saying the Wolves are about to go on a 16-game string, 11 of them on the road against teams all above 500. What are they going to be like? And I would have been happy with 8-8. I said 8-8 is 25-12, and the bulk of their tough schedule behind them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a catbird seat. Well, they got their 26th win tonight, which means the worst they could do in this 16-game schedule is 9-7.
Who said 10-6 though?
There you go.
As I'm holding on to this Boston. So we'll see. I mean, so they're gonna come out of it though. In all seriousness, either way, over 500.
They're gonna come out of this 26-11 worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And OKC lost a couple all of a sudden.
And doing it in 26-11 or 27-10, while having lost their identity at times over it. Traveling a ton. What did Chris say today?
Yeah, 17,000 miles
over since December 11th when this all started. I got sick a good amount.
They played badly. I mean, they had a few games they won and a few games they lost, where you just went, well, I hope they don't play this way, indefinitely, because this is not a good path.
Right.
So, here's the really fun part. The Western Conference is the best 15-team alignment I have seen since I started covering the NBA. You've got fading dynasties trying to win rings for Chris Paul and LeBron James, and coaches esteemed and respected on hot seats. You've got teams that people woefully underestimated coming into the season, playing fantastic basketball. You've got a super team that's kind of falling on its face right now. You've got a team that people didn't think might be able to duplicate what they had last year and are roughly duplicating what they had last year. You got a team that was the number one seed until a really bad injury, playing again, really in a zigzag manner, losing by 40 one night, winning by 40. Nobody has lost more big and won more big at the same time than the Pelicans. And in the middle of all this madness, the hometown team right now is the best damn team in the entire division conference, and has been since like the third week of the season. You have a scenario that if you're a Hoops fan, you want to watch anyway because it's high drama and there's so many cool subplots. And oftentimes you're contenting yourself with doing that because the hometown five just don't have it.
Sure.
And you're conjuring draft picks and stupid trades. And instead, all these compelling stories are coming to your place, and your hometown five is going to their place to play meaningful games. I mean, it sets up as just a great season. And people who want to be critical of this season, I'm critical. I mean, I just spent a fair bit of this podcast being critical of different players who I also said had a good game tonight. I have a critical bent. But when push comes to shove, if you don't revel in the 23-24 season to date, then what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you watching the games like the diseased fans of some of these other sports that kind of live to be bitter? I mean, you can say a lot of things about me, but I have never been bitter. Embitterment just strikes me as just such a huge waste of time. Don't waste your time on things that it's sports. And right now you have a chance to have all the things that you should love about sports happen right to you. Open yourself up to the idea that you got the best team in the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is a gas. The Western Conference is like premier television. There's a lot of mini-series going on, and they're all pretty good. And your series is going to win all the awards if the awards were given right now.
Yeah.
Why would you sneer at that or want to be negative about that? You know, it's great. And right now they're 26 and 10. And if they lose to the Celtics, as I'm almost positive they will, they'll be 26 and 11.
That's real, and I think that that comes from somebody as experienced as you are of being there and seeing this up close and in person. Probably a good place for us to wrap it up. It is an interesting thing because you said critical bend or whatever. I think I have some of that too. And you're thinking about this team all the time and noting ways in which it can get better. Whatever I've said that a bunch of different times. We can note those things without it meaning that Finch needs to be fired.
Right.
Right. That's right.
The cat needs to be traded.
The cat needs to be traded, or Kyle Anderson needs to be banished,
right?
Whatever.
He needs to be traded for Tyus Jones.
Yeah, or Rudy Gobert can't play that, and there's a lot of that, and I think I've thought about it, and it's made me kind of not engage as much this season, because there's a lot of as much anger and animus as any season I can remember since I've been doing it, and I just think it's just okay to note the ways in which it can get better without saying it's on fire. Because it's been on fire for 30 years, man.
And not only that, but
most of 30.
Look, if it's championship or bust, you are going to be an unhappy person under the best of circumstances 70% of your life. And that's under the best of circumstances. I grew up with the Boston Celtics, probably the most dominant dynasty of my lifetime. And in 10 years, people are going to be saying the most dominant dynasty of the past.
Yeah.
And if you want to think championship or bust, you are setting yourself up for unhappiness.
Yeah.
And you're not being a fan, you are being a martyr. And martyrdom, unless you believe in Jesus, makes no sense.
All right. He's Britt Robson. I actually haven't read your column yet because I've been traveling, but you did have a column come out.
I guess it was today, Tuesday. It came out today. Yeah.
This afternoon.
Travel changes here.
Yeah, right. That's at MinnPost.com. Do you want to plug the and one thing?
Sure. I have no idea how it's going, but I was given the opportunity to write more. Well, actually, I came up with an idea to write more. It used to be that I had to write 2,000 words because they wanted to keep a uniform length, and I used to write 3,000 words easily. And so the idea was, for my idea, when they said they wanted to have a newsletter, well, let's give them something and let extra, let's call it N1. So now people who sign up for the newsletter, and there are other newsletters on MinnPost, it's not a new thing, but some of it's involving politics or the Glean or something. But this is a basketball. My columns get sent to you in your mailbox, but then you also get added content, the N1. And that gives me a chance to write a little longer. After I've given them my 2,000 words, I can write, whatever's on my mind.
Or like bullet pointy type thing.
Actually, mostly it's just been riffs. I'll just, it's kind of like these things. I get up at like 3 a.m. and my deadline is at 10. So by the time I'm doing this at 11, I'm just saying column's done, but I still got some time to screw around.
Right.
And so it's a little more fanciful, I think. And, but it's also stuff that's sort of on the topic I've been writing about. It just gives me a chance to say a little more, and I'll never turn that down.
Okay, so check that out at MinnPost. It's linked in his columns. I hope all of you are reading Britt. I think you're a very good talker, but I think you're an even better writer, and having kind of that columnist role allows you to write more broad, like paint with broader brushes than maybe John or Chris or Jace can when they're writing all on the beat. So if you've gotten to know Britt through the podcast here, I would just push you to check that out, and any extra content here with And One Thing. Again, that's MinnPost.com. Britt's on Twitter at Britt Robson. I will be back. I would think I'll be back on Thursday morning with Kyle after the Boston game. I'm heading to Boston to cover that game, and then Kyle and I will talk about it on Thursday morning, and we'll see if my 10-6 prediction is correct.
And even better, they've got a better chance than people think prediction.
Yeah, exactly. So he's Britt at Britt Robson. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. I will talk to you with Kyle on Thursday morning. Hopefully I get to Boston. Until then, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.